Chapter 29 The Meeting with Luminous. After everyone had soaked in the hot spring, the female goblins, who were serving as maids in the castle, directed everyone to the dining room, where an extravagant dinner has been prepared for them. The main dish was tempura along with fried chicken, seafood, hamburger, and honey with bread. For dessert, steak, croissants, and fried shrimp. Rimiru was very adamant on the type of food he likes to eat. He shared his memory with the different types of food from his world to Shina and the other cooks. The dining room was big and had a huge table fit for a king and subjects in the middle of the room, with different variations of food was laid on the table before everyone to enjoy. Rimiru and Milim took the seats that were meant for them at the head of the table, while Luminous and Hinata took the seats opposite from them. Mimaru, Shinan, Shuna, Saye, Carrier, Ultima, Valdor, and Rhaegar were seated at the right side of the table, while Sarah, Arnaud, Batches, Litis, Fritz, and Renard were seated at the left side of the table. The other paladins were being served their dinner in another room. Everyone was provided the appropriate clothes that suits this kind of dinner. For men, they were wearing simple black suits, and the females were wearing an elegant dress. Rimiru and Milim were wearing a yukata fit for very high-class rich man and woman. For the other female goblins were standing at the entrance of the dining room as the perfect trained maids. Before they begin dinner, Hinata raised her hand and looked at Rima with a determined way. "Is something wrong, Hinata?" Rimiru asked her. Hinata took a deep breath before she began. "I'd like to once again apologize for the trouble we've caused you. What happened today, as well as the last time we met, was thanks to my poor judgment. Lean, Luminous, and my paladins have nothing to do with it. So if you can please forgive." Hinata didn't finish because Rimiru stopped her by raising his hand. Rimiru sighed. "Listen, Hinata, that misunderstanding is all cleared up, and I bear no ill will towards you or your nation. I would like us to be friends, and if you could drop the prejudices against monsters, then all the better." Hinata didn't know what to say, but she just nodded. "I know I'm asking a lot," Rimiru continued. "A monster, in essence, are vicious creatures. If you believe that all of them are good without a question, and innocent lives are killed later by those same monsters, then you have set yourself up as a failure. Maybe we could speak to each other, but it doesn't mean we have understood one another. But this country can make it work. Here my people are giving humans a chance, despite Shinan being killed by humans and Shuna and the others being hurt by humans. This country that I built is meant to bridge the hate between monsters and humans. Just as there are evil humans who you could even call monsters, there are also monsters that are just plain evil. If a human can understand that not all monsters are evil, and take the time to talk and interact with citizens of this country, I will believe that we can come to agreement and understand." Rumor explained his plans to them. Shina and smiled along with Shinan was smiling. While Shinan was smiling with a smug look, the paladins didn't know what to think after that explanation that Rimiru just gave them. It went against everything they thought, but they couldn't deny that there is truth in what Demon Lord Rimiru had said. Hinata looked at her food. It's true that conversation is the first step to understanding, but that leads to dangerous transactions. You run the risk of making the commitment that binds you, your heart, and soul. That's true that, but if you're not at least to declare all monsters evil, we're totally fine with that. And if you have a monster that you don't like, we'll take care of them. If human society can't accept them, they will be fine here. Rimiru looked at her. Hinata scratched her hair and sighed. All right, I don't think our changes will change. Our thoughts will change anytime soon. But I will prohibit my rank from commending all monsters as evil. Is that all right with you, Lady Luminous? I don't care for such matters, but if my citizens began to doubt their faith in me because of this, I will not stand for it. Luminous said while drinking her wine. If that is your first priority, then I will see that our first priority. Hinata responded immediately. Hinata turned to her subordinates and bowed with apology with her head touching the table. I must apologize to you all as well. I promise that I will not treat any of you as hostile enemies simply for being monsters. The other paladins hurriedly followed her lead, shouting, We're sorry together. Please think nothing of it, Rigard said. We're not for Rimiru's orders. We would have considered humans our foes as well. I'm just glad that you aren't against us. I saw your battle with Lord Rimiru and made me curious to see who will come out on top if we both sparred with each other, Bimaru said with a bold grain. Arnott and Batches began to sweat bullets after hearing that. They both knew that firsthand how strong Hinata and Bimaru were, and both of them knew that a fight between those two powerhouses might destroy a nation if they were not careful. They both prayed that they never had a front row seat to that fight. Rimiru turned to Shinon and saw her confused look. Shinon, she looked at him. I understand your pain and anger against humans, but try to understand that not all humans are evil. You have some bad guys and some good guys. That's all there is to it. And monsters are the same way. You have to get closer to look. You have to get a closer look if you want to understand humans. I see. Then I will judge humans based on their intention and souls, just like you, my Lord Rimiru. Just like you, Lord Rimiru. Shinon beamed as if she was unshouldering a heavy burden from her heart. Rimiru turned to Milim. That's all right with you. That's all right with you, right, sweetheart? Milim looked at Hinata and shrugged. I really don't care about that, but if anyone tries to bring harm to you or a nation, she released a little bit of horror, which to humans and monsters in the room was quite big and scary. I will remind them why I'm called the Destroyer. The paladins gulped at the presence of Milim's aura created, and the monsters were of a similar thought of how scary Milim was at that moment. Luminous stopped her drinking and looked at Milim, who was looking straight at her and looking straight at her as she said that. She didn't want to admit it, but she was frightened of Milim. After the beating she gave, she didn't want to look weak in front of all these people, but Milim's gaze was bringing back some of her buried emotions she didn't know she still had in her. Those were the emotions that she had buried after her encounter with Veldor's power up close. And that emotion was fear. Yes, Milim had made her remember the deep fear she felt when she saw Veldor's power and significance she felt compared to him. She was about to lose her composure when she felt someone grab her hand that was under the table. She turned and saw Hinata smiling at her. The smile helped her calm down and suppress her fear. All right, that's enough, Rimiru waved his hand and the pressure disappeared. The paladins breathed in relief from being freed from that dread. They vowed to never mess with this nation, no matter what. Milim, no matter how No need to frighten them anymore. I believe that they all understand the full well what will happen if they continue to be hostile with us, right?" He turned to the guests. "Of course, Demon Lord Rimiru, we would rather be on friendly terms than be hostile with you," Arnaud declared. The others nodded their heads and agreed with him. Rimiru smiled. "Good, now, let's enjoy this lovely dinner before it gets cold." Rimiru said this because people like Valdor, Carrier, and Ultima looked very impatient to start eating. Rimiru raised his golden cup to make a toast. "Well, here's to the battles we've all fought, and to our new understanding. Cheers!" "Cheers!" everyone shouted together. With that said, the lovely dinner began in earnest. Our lovely maids came and poured drinks for everyone, and some paladins were even drilling at the maids. Everyone began to eat, and before long the dining room was silent and the sound of utensils being heard. Rima looked up from his food and saw his subordinates trying to act like high-class nobles should, but they were very uncomfortable and failing miserably. He turned his eyes to the paladin and saw that they too were trying to and failing to eat like high-class nobles. Only Hinata and Luminous seemed to be the only ones eating with a calm look, like a true noble woman. He glanced at Milim and saw that she was eating as normally as she eats, without noticing the awkward atmosphere in the room. He suspected this was because she was looking forward to dessert, which was bread with honey. He Rimuru sighed and clicked his glass cup with his fork to get everyone's attention. "I know this might look like a formal dinner, but everyone here are acting way too out of character. Please, let's leave the formalities aside for later and just enjoy the lovely dinner without all this stiffness." After Rimuru said that, all the paladins had a relieved expression before they began to eat without any formalities. The first to relax among them was Fritz, who took the opportunity to get his hand on the chicken laps he was eyeing. Once the paladins saw that, they too relaxed and began to chat and enjoy themselves. As for Rimuru's subordinates, Carria was the first to relax and dig into her food with a huge smile on her face. Ultima, seeing this, also relaxed and began to eat her food, but not as fast as Carria was eating hers. The others were also relaxed and began to chow down. Rimuru smiled, seeing the tension leaving the room. He felt someone grab his hand, and he turned and saw Hinata looking at him with a smile, which he turned before he turned back to his food. The next day, it was exactly 9 in the morning, and Rimuru was waiting in the new meeting room awaiting the arrival of Luminous and her people. The new meeting room was inside his castle, since it was decided that everything concerning the nation's affairs will be handled inside the newly built castle. After some time, Luminous entered the room guided by 2 female goblin maids along with her people. Once they have seated, Rimuru began the meeting that will determine the future relationship between Tempest and Lubilis. On the right side of the table were Tempest representative, which consisted of Shinon, Rigard, and Beamar, along with Rigard and Rogard. Those 3 were the government administrator of justice, legislation, and administration of Tempest. On the left, we are the representative of Luminous, which consists of Louise, who appeared next to Luminous last night after the dinner that they had in the top 6 paladins. Rimiru had the paladins introduce themselves formally. There was Silver of the Blue Sky, former chief knight of the Imperial Guard. There was Vice Captain Renard, the Noble of Light. There was Arnard of Air, the strongest of them all after Hinata. And under him was Batches of Earth, Litus of Water, and Fritz of Wind. At the head of the table was Rimiru, Where Rimiru was sitting next to him was yeah. At the head of the table was Rimiru, and Milim was sitting beside him. Opposite them was Luminous, and seated next to her was Hinata. And with that, the proceedings began. Rimiru started by passing out issues that was affecting all of them to everyone in the meeting room. The meeting began with both sides explaining themselves to each other in order to understand the root of the problem, the root of the cause of all the problem was all about. Sorry again. The meeting began with both sides explaining themselves to each other in order to understand what the root of the problem was all about. What the root cause of the problem was all about. And that was the situation that when we received the request from Archbishop Raham, who was in Pharmas at the time, Cardinal Nicholas gave his approval, and I was all for it because I wanted to get back at you at the time, Hinata. Explain. Was that because of Shizu? Rimiru asked her. Hinata sighed. Yes, it was. I suppose I was just being used, though. Looking back on, I don't know who was operating behind the scenes, but there was definitely Eastern Merchant involved. Merchant, eh? I knew that Clayman must have been cooperating with a merchant from those countries, but to think it was someone was the East, Rumor said. That's right, they told me that you killed Shizu, and you happened to be stationed in Glacia. That's why I took initiative to kill you when I had the chance, Hinata explained. You did a fine job at pissing me off. Just remembering that makes me a little more angry, Rimuru said while releasing a little bit of dragon's haki. Everyone in the room that was not Rimuru's subordinates began to tremble in fear once they felt Rimuru's aura. They seemed to forget that Rimuru, despite how he may act sometimes, is the strongest being in this kingdom or even the whole world. His aura was suffocating them on the verge, and they were on the verge of passing out. Milim noticed and turned to Rimiru. I know that you are upset, darling, but at this rate they will pass out if you don't control your aura. Rimiru looked taken aback and immediately controlled his aura, which brought great relief to everyone in the room. Sorry about letting my emotions get the best of me. I will try to control it for the duration of this meeting, Rimiru informed them. You are well justified for being angry, Rimiru. But please control your aura next time, Loomis told him. Okay, Rimiru said before to resume the meeting. Now that is clear that the Eastern Merchant is behind this. Do we have any names? I know one. He called himself Daham. But I'm sure it's an alias, Hinata informed him. An alias, huh? We can be pretty much guess that this merchant was connected to Clayman, and I'm willing to bet that he and his people are the guys who set Pharma's King Edmaris on us, too, Rimuru said with a sigh. No, there's no doubting that. We confirm as much as when we questioned Raham, Hinata said. Lord Rimuru, do you think that Eastern Merchant were Clayman's boots in the ground? Baymar asked. Well, it's quite obvious, isn't it? Clayman was controlling Pharmas from behind the curtain, and not the cooperative kind of way. Rimuru answered him. And I suppose I was just another cog in the machine, Hinata whispered with a clenched fist. In the end, it really doesn't matter. What matters now is that we can bet that someone we don't know was engineering all this. And this same someone was Clayman's boots, Rimuru informed them. Do you mean that the person Clayman shouted before he almost self-destructed himself? Loomis asked. Rimuru nodded his head at her. What do you mean, sir asked. Do you mean that someone else is behind all this? Arnott asked. The other paladins paid attention to hear what Rimuru has to say. Well, it looks like Clayman was doing the bidding of someone else himself, Rimiru informed them. That's true. He refused to divulge this someone's identity until the very end. Impressive, I must say, and considering that it was Raymer himself who was questioning him, Luminous said to them. Oh my, Litus said. Could this someone be the 7 days, my lord? Rigord asked. What, are you accusing the 7 days clergy of taking action unbeknownst to me? Luminous asked with a raised voice while standing. Milim, who was getting bored, looked at Luminous with a smile. Luminous, who noticed the smile, began to sway and calmly sat down back in her chair. Milim still had the smile on her face, which was making Luminous very uncomfortable. Rimmer noticed the change in Luminous whenever she looks at Milim. It almost seems like Milim is her worst nightmare. I guess Milim must have frightened her during their fight. I cannot fully deny that possibility, Louise said. Luminous sharply turned to Louise, her fear of Milim forgotten. What are you trying to say, Louise? Louise began to sweat and tried to calm his lady. Lady Luminous, please understand. Please listen to me. The 7 days clergy crave your attention so much, as I'm sure you sensed. How do you mean? Luminous asked. I'm talking about the love energy, the energizing kiss you give in a special ceremony. The last time you did it, it was over 100 years ago. At one point, it was a weekly rite, but the intervals between them grew longer and longer over time, Louisa explained to her. Luminous had an unpleasant look. Yes, my internal youth tends to make me forget, but they were all human. Without my energy, they may not die, but will certainly grow old. Exactly, that was why they worked so fervently to ensure that no other favorites besides them ever appeared, which is why they harbored deep passion hatred for Hinata because she stole your affection of all to herself, Louise said bluntly. Hinata blushed after hearing that, but what Louise said next made her want to die of embarrassment. Well, Hinata is mine and mine alone. I don't plan to share my affections with anyone else but her, Luminous said with a confident voice, not yet realizing the implications of her word to the paladins and every other person in the room. The paladins were wise enough to remain silent after seeing the glare Hinata shot at them when they wanted to question what Louise said. The meeting continued like this, like so, everyone bringing their own theories and idea who the mastermind could be. Eventually, it was concluded that Yuki is the most likely suspect, as he was the only one at the time who knew the truth about Shizu. Everyone agreed to be on the lookout for any suspicious movement from the east. After that, the meeting moved to the main agenda. All right. About the future relationship, do you agree to enter a formal diplomatic relationship with us and formally recognize our nation? Rimiru asked Luminous. I have no qualms with it. I frankly rather stay on friendly terms with you than be hostile. But don't suspect our nations become fast friends. You still harbor our nation's greatest enemy, the storm dragon Valdora, and I will settle my score with him one day. But for now, we can call it a truce. Louise explained. If that's what it is, Lady Luminous, if that is Lady Luminous's wish, then we will obey, Hinata said. The other paladins nodded their heads in approval. They were not stupid enough to believe that being hostile to a nation with 3 true dragons in it was a good idea. They have seen a glimpse of what Rimiru can do, and frankly they did not want to ever be on the receiving end of such powers again in their second life. Rumor smiled. I'm glad to hear it, and don't worry about Valdor. As long as I am here, he won't be going out of control. I'll hold you to it, Lumina said with a smile. Suddenly, so you appeared next to Rimmer. Lord Rimmer, it seems we have captured an intruder. Everyone became an alarm, and Rimmer asked, who is the intruder? It is a member of the clown troops, the female one who called herself Tyr. She insists that she has an urgent warning she wants to deliver to you personally. Shall he explain? Rimmer stood up. Bring her to the throne room. Bring her to the throne room. I'll be there shortly. So he nodded and disappeared. Rimiru began to leave the room with Milim and his subordinates following him. Do you mind if we come as well, Rimiru? And Luminous asked. I don't mind. This might concern your nation too, since she might have information we need, Rimiru told her. Luminous nodded and stood and followed Rimiru and the rest to the throne room. The paladins and Hinata followed as well to see what this was all about. That's all for today's video. Don't forget to subscribe today to become one of my domestic listeners. Goodbye and peace out, everyone.